This episode is for Friday, June 26th, 2015. Welcome, Meteor fans. I'm your host, Josh Owens, along with my co-host,
Rye Walker.
I'm just messing with you guys. If you listen to it at 2x speed, it probably sounded really weird there.
Yeah, I was wondering what the hell's going on with your voice.
I've been playing with Overcast because I listen to like Entre Programmers, which is a little long. Their episodes clock in at like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right.
And so, I try to listen while I'm running, and getting an episode in means I got to run like 4 times a week or something, which is a good thing. But so I started playing with like speeding up podcasts, and
yeah, I turned that button on Overcast.
Yeah, and then you can tell it to do like the smart clipping too, to get rid of the or the pauses, I guess. I hire a guy, so if you listen to this, he cuts out all the ums, ahs, and awkward pauses. Kind of nice.
He does?
Yeah. He does. He's gonna kill me. All right. So this week we've got some interesting news. We're gonna talk about faster blazing blaze, Neo4J, scaling down on reactivity, the web after tomorrow. And Percolate got acquired. This is big news today. So yeah. We'll get into that as well. That one happened right as I was putting this list together. I had a different story in there and took it out and put this one in. So yeah. So let's talk about faster blaze. This was interesting. So I saw a tweet, from Airnoda. It was like early morning his time, I think it was, and you see this tweet about like, I'm working on an experiment with Meteor, and I'm just sitting here wondering what could this be from Airnoda. And then later that day, he just posts a link and says experiment success, and it's a video that he shows off faster blaze. And there were 2 interesting things in here. So I haven't had a chance to look at Kadira debug yet, but he shows a little bit of that. So that looked kind of interesting. And then on top of that, essentially what he's doing is caching the template itself. And so code that runs in there gets cached as well. So basically he's got, to show you the difference, he's got a page that renders like 10 items in a list, and he loops over them, puts them on the page. And it's not being driven by a DDP subscription or anything. I think it might take a little bit of work to get that done. But I think with subscription caching as well, like these 2 things could combine together and get some real performance. But in the video, it goes on to switch it to like 10,000 items on the page. And you can see like it takes a couple seconds at least to render the page once it gets that large. And then he clicks into another page and then clicks back to the main page, and it's got to sit there and churn and re-render the page. And so instead, he's built this cacher, I think it was called in the video, and you just tell it what template you want it to load. And my guess is it's just like saving that template in memory as already rendered. So when you come back, it'll render it for you pretty fast. He was able to, once he turned it on, he was just able to go back and forth between the links, and it was just like instant rendering. So it's smart. I'll give him that. I'd be curious to see like what's the memory usage before and after on the client, because a Blaze client is actually pretty thin, 9-10 megabytes. So I'd be curious to see that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't play around with this or even watch the video, so I'm I tried to, but it was playing audio right over the podcast here. So,
do you guys use template or the subs manager at all?
I'm sure they are. I'm not using it in the projects that I'm working on, but I know some of the guys at Differential are.
Yeah. So it's along those same lines, I think, where you're able to tell that the template or the DDP data probably hasn't changed. So you're like able to reuse that subscription and not have to re-pull all that stuff into memory.
Yeah.
And so it's basically the same idea, just for a template. So
yep.
Kind of interesting.
All right. Cool. All right, let's jump over to the next article by Sam Korkos.
Yep.
Meteor plus Neo4j. The idea here is to connect Meteor to a Neo4j database, which is a graph database. And luckily his brother built a package. That's nice, right?
Yeah.
When you have brothers building packages that you can rely on. It's a C Korkos Neo4j. Chet packet. Chet Korkos. He just kind of talks through how to connect your app to Neo4j, which is, I'd say, the leading lightweight graph database. If you need that sort of functionality in your app, definitely beats out the performance of traditional relational or NoSQL databases for that kind of application. So, have you used Neo4j, Josh, on anything?
I haven't used Neo4j, but it's one of those things that I wish I would have known about, or I don't even know when Neo4j kind of hit a wider audience. But back when I was creating something similar to what David's building, where you kind of analyze, like you give me 3 Twitter accounts, and I would analyze who follows them and try to figure out that overlap, and like literally just building that overlap graph. And that was probably the hardest thing, because if someone put in like CNN, or someone put in like my wife wanted to find readers on Twitter, and so she put in J.K. Rowling, and like that's a huge account, and even just storing 1 million IDs in a table and then trying to do some kind of like overlap graph with 1 million IDs can be kind of tough to do. And so this was back in Ruby days, and so the comparison would get kind of hard to run, because Ruby just couldn't handle that much data in the memory, and it would like crash and fall over, or it would just consume enormous amounts of memory on Heroku, and then Heroku would kill it. And so, yeah, I think something like Neo4j would make a ton more sense for figuring that kind of stuff out. So
yeah, I was just searching my email for it, and I asked the internet on Twitter in November, and what are the cool kids using for graph databases? And Josh Owens responded, Neo4j. You remember that?
No, I don't remember that. But
this is not our first Neo4j interaction.
Yes, indeed.
So,
yeah, I haven't had any personal experience, but I will say this: Sam is part of the patrons, and so we do an hour of coding every month. And this month, this was like days after the article came out. We did our pairing, and we wrote some tiny tests for the package. And so he really wants to see this thing grow, and we had a conversation that tests are a good way to kind of indicate that you guys at least care about the package long term. And so we did that, and I don't know, it's a pretty slim package, honestly. After looking at it, it's just using HTTP under the covers. So he's just making HTTP calls to the Neo4j database. So it's not reactive per se, but I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a REST API style interaction. So
yeah, and you can always like aggregate that data into Mongo if you cared about it being reactive or something on the front end, and just run it every couple of minutes or something.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Clever. All right. Get back to the list here. Scaling down. Let's see. What's the full title? Scaling down subscriptions and reactivity in Meteor. So this is from our good buddy Max Savin, Mr. Meteor Toys himself. And he's on this quest that like live query is a bad thing and it's gonna like kill Meteor. I don't know that that's true, but he's definitely like looking for ways to eliminate live query from some parts of your application. And funnily enough, I think you're going to talk about the next story, the Web After Tomorrow, which talks a little bit about like reactivity in PubSub, and they have a good graph on that page. And I think that graph kind of is a good example of what Max is trying to get at. And that's some parts of your page care about real-time data, and other parts of your page maybe care about sometimes updated data, and then other parts of your page are just static, and I think the static pieces, I've seen people do this. They create like a site copy collection, or they create some kind of like data structure that's coming from Mongo, and it's being shipped over DDP so they can control things through the database. And you don't necessarily always need that. And so he's created this fetcher, which works with Meteor's reactive dictionary, and you're able to kind of set data and let it come across, and it's not necessarily using live query, right? Like it's one time shipping across the wire rather than like using live query, which if you don't know it's got expensive overhead to kind of keep track of that data on the server. And even if you turn reactivity off, there's still like that memory is consumed on the server side, even if not on the client side.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get that not all the data needs to be real time, but life is simpler in a world where you just interact with your database in that way.
I would agree until maybe your site gets slower, or you want to maybe squeeze out an extra bit of performance. It definitely seems like one of those, like, I don't want to say edge case, but definitely like something that you'll get at much later in your development cycle.
Right. Yeah, if it's part of performance optimization. I wonder though, is this a design? Is this a performance was this driven because of a performance issue, or was this driven because of just an architectural opinion?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever really gotten to the core of what his issue is with live query. We've never had like a deep talk about what made him think it was really broken. But my guess is, like, honestly, you look at oplog, right, and like the oplog back pressure situation that you deal with. And I think it's along those lines, the server realistically can only do so much before you kind of run out of some kind of overhead CPU or memory, and it's better to minimize that when you can.
Yeah. So one strategy to solve that would be, I like the idea of like pushing the data into a different database, different Mongo if necessary, but like that's kind of what Kadira is doing. They're moving the high velocity data out of the primary apps database and into something. And I like that approach more than I like this, for example. But I could see how this is, if there's just like you need a Band-Aid on something that's just really breaking your performance, this is probably a pretty neat solution.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that I think you could use this for. Like, exactly, he shows like get menu for the burritos, and like the menu data, it's not going to be real time. Like,
yeah, right.
You don't necessarily need someone to know that you added, the fluff and nutter burrito to your menu right away. Like, it's okay if they'll see it on getting to your store or, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
It's interesting.
I agree. It's like, but then, is it premature optimization? Because it's not causing a performance issue the way it works now. Now, if is it causing a user issue? No, because it takes the same amount of time for the data to get there. So he just likes the idea of not asking the server to do stupid work, which it is in this case.
Yeah.
Just keep maintaining that for all these clients, and you have 1,000 clients, and there's 1,000 copies of a menu that's never going to change. That seems dumb. For me, I scale up to another server in the short term. It's kind of the DHH philosophy of, servers are cheaper than programmers. So
very true.
Optimize for programmer happiness and speed.
Very true.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious too, right? Because this article is very much like coming from an advice standpoint rather than like here's my experience and why I did it standpoint. So we'd be curious to hear, Max, what led to this.
Yes, follow-up post.
Indeed.
All right. Next topic. This one's me. The web after tomorrow. Sounds like a movie, a bad movie. I don't know.
Gyllenhaal is going to come after us.
Yeah. The web after tomorrow. So it's kind of interesting. This looks like a Clojure guy, because at the end of it he says, I think this would be a good thing that we can use Clojure with.
Well, he does mention Meteor as well, saying
Yeah. In the middle, he says like Meteor is getting really close to doing this, but going to the premise, he's basically describing like a real-time web system very similar to Meteor, and how you might approach building such a thing. A lot of philosophy there, and then he finally realizes like, oh, Meteor is pretty much there, but I think again, people love using the tools that they know, so he envisions a way that he can make this happen using Closure and let's see what was the other pieces. Datomic. I don't even know what Datomic is. Data script. It's pretty cool. But the thing I enjoyed about this article though is just to hear someone thinking through the problem that Meteor has solved in a lot of ways. I mean, again, it's not a perfect solution, but
right.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun like realization that other people are starting to hone in on this type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can look at Action Cable and Rails and what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to figure out a way to approach this as well. And the thing I like about Meteor is even though they're creating new standards, they're at least adhering to standards, right? And the problem is, I think when you look at some of the other solutions that are out there, there's no standard to them necessarily. It's just kind of like, oh, hey, look, we've got WebSockets. Let's just figure out how we're going to serialize and deserialize on both sides of the socket, and maybe we'll do something interesting with that. And so, like, it got murky to me when I was watching the Rails keynote, and DHH was talking about it. He's like, well, sometimes we'll just ship data, sometimes we'll like ship HTML over the WebSocket. And it's like, that sounds terrible. Like, how am I supposed to know when to do what? Is it just like, is it up to DHH to tell me when I do what? Or like, let's just have a standard and we can get some nice interoperability here between frameworks, and that could be very, very interesting in my opinion. So that's one thing I definitely applaud Meteor on, is trying to at least create something here. I think the question just becomes, and I've talked to Matt DeBergalis about this before, like, he says right here, I can't find any information about consistency or reliability guarantees or how well the server pushes scale with number of subscriptions. So, I think some of that data is dependent on the application itself, right? So Kadir is very different than Telescope, or if I just go write a Hello World app with no real data behind it, like I can scale to millions of users with one server. It doesn't matter. So I think the conversation that needs to happen in the Meteor community is for people to focus on measuring DDP performance and what are the different ways we can scale it up and that kind of thing. So
well, and obviously like the growing base of apps and as they become more mature will create pressure for that sort of stuff. So I think it's cool though. It's like Meteor's the grandpa now of this whole movement. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking to it for inspiration, and I'm sure there'll be ideas that pop out that we can bring back into Meteor too. So
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you see things happening in React, and I don't know, there could be interesting things that come back to Blaze because of it. So
totally. Cool. All right.
And with that, one way that Meteor can learn about what needs to happen and get better is through them actually now offering, what did they call it? Meteor Developer Subscription?
Yes. Developer subscription.
Yeah. So maybe not the best name. I don't know. But, MDS. That's not bad, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the MDS from MDG. But so basically, they went and they hired Percolate and folded them into the team, which is a very interesting move. I think it caught. As far as I could tell, it caught everyone off guard. I don't think anyone kind of knew this was coming. I guess maybe some people did. If you read the Percolate's announcement, maybe like Chris Mather and Sasha knew. But everyone else I've talked to was kind of like blown away by this and definitely intrigued. And, I think it puts an interesting wrinkle into the developer community, right? The people that are professionally making money off of this. because now, number one, like we have a place to go if we have questions, and maybe we can get them answered in a timely fashion, which could be interesting, depending on the cost, right? We don't know what that is. And also, they now have people who, I've said this a couple of times, I think, the Meteor team doesn't really build Meteor apps. They occasionally will take some time off and do something, but they don't spend their days building Meteor apps. They spend their days building the framework. And I think there's some slight disconnect there because they'll put something out and then you don't really catch all the edge cases, in my opinion. Because, like, for instance, I've been having some weird problems with Xcode and Cordova, and I think because they don't ever submit anything to the App Store, they probably have no idea that these bugs exist,
Right.
And so
yeah.
I think this will be a good thing as well, because they'll have people they're like Tom and Zoe will actually be looking at a wide variety of applications, not just even the 4 that they may have previously worked on as a small company, So
yeah, I mean, they're going to get basically the people who are going to come to them are going to be the hardest problems, most likely, right? Because it's typically the case, I think, with any technology. If you're buying a support pack from the makers of the technology, it probably means you're approaching enterprise size. You just need that level of support. So I think it'll be kind of cool if they're going to have a good visibility on the hardest problems that people are facing in Meteor, and being so close to the actual core team, the dev team, should be. I think it should be a good thing. I think as Meteor grows, this type of service needs to exist. And for them to allow just like let the community handle it in an unofficial way, ad infinitum, is probably not a good thing. So I think big companies. Here's an example. We did connect with a company that one of the terms of the deal was introduce us to Meteor. We're like, we want to be able to talk to those people, and like really there was no one to introduce them to. That's going to be highly responsive, because that was no one's job.
Right.
I think like in this case, like sure, here you go, talk to them as much as you want. Here's the deal on how you can have a relationship with Meteor where they have resources available to take care of you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. To me, I think you have to go after the high-end client, like you mentioned, because I mean, you can't hire top level developers and, this is officially their first product, right? So, I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of eyeballs on how many people are hiring them and what kind of money's coming out of that. So I've got to imagine this is going to be at a higher price point. I don't know. They didn't include that here, so we're just kind of speculating. But
yeah.
So my guess is it'll definitely be a lot higher end of the market, and they're also. To your point, they've grown from 19 people to 31 now, according to this blog post. So they've been expanding rapidly, and they will continue to expand rapidly, I think, in the coming months. Yeah. You see they hired the VP of marketing, and now I hear they're maybe getting a new VP of something else. So a lot of interesting stuff happening, and the hope is they'll get more responsive on a lot of these things as they offload Jeff and Matt's plate, hopefully, to focus on the core of Meteor, and other people handle the new opportunities and that kind of thing. So the biggest question is, what happens to Atmosphere?
Oh, yeah. Well, now Atmosphere would be an internal product or project of Meteor. So
Right. And from my conversations and understanding is they always plan to do some kind of commercial thing with Atmosphere, either through ads or through private package hosting or something, which is one of the reasons it wasn't open sourced. And so now, is that going to continue to maybe be an offering on the radar, or are we just going to see Atmosphere open sourced so that the community can contribute and do something with it?
Dun, dun, dun. To be continued. We don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
Well, we said it on a podcast now, so they've got to do something.
Yeah, of course.
But this is, either way, I think this is pretty exciting news. So kudos to both MDG and to Percolate. I hope it's exciting times for them. Certainly seems like it from our vantage point.
Yep. I'm sure we'll know more as the weeks go on. Maybe we'll get one of those guys on the podcast.
Yeah, maybe. We'll maybe I'll have him on the Meteor Club podcast or something too. So do a very in-depth conversation.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So
that's the end of our list, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I know you've been working on Astronomer. Are you gonna talk about the alpha or no?
Yeah. Basically, so Greg Niehazel, if you guys know him, he kicked serious ass getting a lot of it done. We got to the point now where we can test it with live Meteor apps. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, astronomer.io, be part of our private alpha. We're basically saying don't use it for production just yet, but we should be a few weeks away from that. Bottom line is it's a way to automatically instrument your app for user analytics. So not traditional Google Analytics, which is just what pages are getting hit and where are they coming from, but more specifically, what are your users doing inside of your app? So. So our package basically, in a very opinionated way, automatically instruments your app so that you don't have to sit down and think through, what are all the things that my app's doing and what of those events do I want to send off to analytics. So it's early. We're ready to get feedback on how to make those event names better and, all the different techniques we're using to collect them. But it's an open source package too, so anyone can contribute to it. I'm sure I'll be bugging you, Josh, and I'm sure a lot of you in the community will hear from me in the next few weeks.
Nice.
I apologize in advance, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice.
It's interesting because that stuff's always kind of hard to figure out, and you and I had a conversation offline. It's for me, I don't want to go figure out mixed panel and segment and all these other plethora of tools that I have no idea what I'm doing,
Right.
And then even if you do get segment set up, you still have to go actually instrument a lot of your code to say, hey, an event happened. Yeah. And I spent a little bit of time doing that in Google Analytics with the Mastering Meteor training page. And in the end, I still don't like the solution that I came up with and the limitations that Google Analytics has because I still don't think I get all the data that I want or need. So it would be kind of interesting to see how you guys have that working.
Yeah, and we're basically our philosophy is collect everything that push, get all the data points rather than just collecting a few points, and then you can decide later on what was important. But it's nice to have the full history of everything. Someday you're gonna realize, I wish I would have recorded that, but you didn't, and you lost that data. So, yeah, but the main thing is we want it to be as easy to set up user analytics as it is to set up Google Analytics. So that's what we're doing. It's very fast. So for Meteor developers at least, and then eventually we might move outside of Meteor, but for now we have to nail this one very well. So and it's tricky, honestly. There's gotchas, especially due to the way Meteor works, with Blaze and reactivity and all that kind of stuff, that a lot of times the first time you set up analytics, you're kind of battling Meteor at times to track the events, when you think you should track them. And so all that stuff will be built in, all the solutions to those problems will be built into our tracker.
Nice. Cool.
Yep. So, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about that.
Yeah.
Thanks. How about, we should talk about Space Dojo. What's going on with that?
I mentioned it last week, and then I put it up on Crater on Monday, and I got some good, I got a nice amount of upvotes and good amount of traffic. I probably had 500 or 600 people hit the site, so I was pretty excited about that. And I think I've had 6 or 7 applications. And a couple of those filled out, I've got a type form that you fill out after you apply or join the list or whatever. And I've had 3 or 4 of those kind of respond. So just trying to filter down. I took this is an interesting move. I had the pricing on there ready to go for launch. And then a couple of people convinced me to take it off. So I'm still kind of feeling out what's the right price point. I kind of know it's somewhere between 800 and 1200, so dollars per code review, like 1-day code review. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think by not having the price there gives you the flexibility too to size it to the problem. You know, like if it's a 2-year-old Meteor app running 0.6, and they come to you, you're going to be like, okay, double.
You need more than a 1-day code review.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you need a team to upgrade you.
But if it's someone just started and they're like running a telescope instance, for example, you know, like that's a lot simpler. So
yeah. It's I haven't had anyone running Telescope yet, but I'm getting a lot of people that apply, and they have like 1 or 2 developers according to the type form. So it's certainly interesting, and definitely like almost like a competing offering with what they announced with Meteor Development Services, right? Because they said they do code reviews as well. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. And then, you know, at the same time, I showed this to Pete Corey about a month ago, and he's like, oh, that's interesting. I like that idea. And I was like, yeah. And then he came back to me like a week ago, and he's like, oh, I liked your idea. I'm going to do it for security, but maybe a little more personalized, a little less productized. And so he actually announced the same day he's doing security code reviews and assessments. So kind of interesting. They're all getting announced all within a week.
Well, yeah, I guess it's just that season of Meteor where these kinds of services start to make sense, and people realize that, and so
we're growing up. We're graduating from elementary school.
Yep. All right, man. I'll talk to you next week.
Yep.
Or if we're gonna do it, I don't know. Friday, it's 4th of July weekend.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Let's say maybe not. Maybe it'll be a bonus if you see something. How's that?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Later, guys.
See ya.
This video has been a Meteor Club production. You can find out more information about Meteor Club and join the mailing list by clicking on the Meteor Club button below. If you enjoyed this video, you can also hit the subscribe button below and get more content like this. Thanks for watching.